This one is part two of my last one regarding the grudges in new YouTubers. To tell the truth, the grudge that reminded me of this topic was between MOT and BGS Ibmore. It wasn't the grudge that gave me this idea from the very beginning. It was the grudge that reminded me that I had this idea from before. And to be fair, MOT was talking about this grudge, and then I remembered it from listening to his live stream. And the thing is this, to be fair, MOT, when Sir Anthony left the comment, I said it's a nice compliment coming from you. It was when he said that was specifically in response to his sentence about my voice being necessary. Now, I did say that I am for learning the history of such grudges because then you know what the ideas are behind each platform. As an example, I was not aware that for a while I was not aware that PUAs and dating coaches are taken as enemies, generally speaking, by the manosphere. Now, as a Muslim, I'm not for PUAs and dating coaches. I'm for matchmakers, but I didn't know what the manosphere's grudge was. And then it comes to find out that they actually have not only a solid logical reason, but it stands up to morality as well, moral scrutiny. And that is that what they're doing is they are taking men and reverse pimping men to wicked witches of the West, still at the man's expense, always at his expense. Telling him he's not good enough until he pays money in a bunch of different directions at once. Pays it to invest, hoping to make it back. Pays it to the PUA or the dating coach. Pays it to gyms. Pays it to clothing stores. And then to her. And to restaurants and other such things to impress her. Maybe they'll say, well, what we do is we teach these men how to be so impressive they don't have to pay the restaurants in order to impress her. Yeah, okay, well, they still have to pay a gym something. And that's actually a very valid reason. I mean, when you're a regular pimp, you sell her to him for a short time at his expense. There's no question about him being not good enough. He paid. That's still too immoral for my taste as a Muslim. However, there's a logic to that, whereas the PUAs and dating coaches are doing the exact reverse and still at the man's expense. So, okay, see, now I listened to what the grudge was. I asked around, and so I do recommend learning the history. I did not agree with Sir Anthony's statement about not learning the history, but it's up to him. I thanked him for the compliment he paid me about my voice in this space and it being necessary, and I hope to be one of those who deserves such compliments. To be fair, he later on replied to you and said, yeah, but see, your own needed voice is hamstrung by these grudges. Now, as I've said, I can have an opinion, I can have a platform, a statement, a stance on whether BGS is right or whether you're right, depending on what the disagreement is. And when you played this morning my time, which would have probably been last night your time, when you played the voice clip in which he called you a spinster, I said in the comments, I would not have done that. No, I don't agree with that. See, I give him shots out, and it's for something specific, like an idea that he gave me, or for helping us with the historical, because again, you said learn the history. He does bring the historical knowledge to us. That's what I found to be very beneficial. He brings the Moynihan Report. He was the first one I heard to talk about the book Daughters of the Trade. So I give him credit for very specific things. We don't just automatically agree with each other all the time. I think he disagrees with me more than I disagree with him. Do you know why? I'm not retired. You are, but you do work sometimes. He's retired, full-time retired. But like you live a real life and like he lives a real life, I have to live one, and mine's probably busier because I'm not retired. I may never even be able to, I don't know. But I'm not retired. And even though I'm not busy now teaching, I still have to live a real life. I still have to go and get the groceries, fill up the car. I got to prepare for a trip that I've got to take. I'm going to be busy on that trip. I got to go and get a negative COVID test. I got to be on the phone to make sure that the airlines don't change my ticket flight date at the last minute and not tell me anything. I got to do a lot of stuff. I mean, normally when I record these things, I get interrupted. That's why my recording about the Grudges and the new YouTubers was so short. I would have covered these things, but I only had 2 minutes and 20 seconds to record because I kept getting interrupted as I was recording previously. All the time, my phone rings. If nothing else, then I'll get a phone call. I was recording this morning. One of my students walked up and called me by my given name. I can't put that recording up, so I had to erase that, talk to him, come back home, start over, got interrupted again with phone calls, got interrupted again, got called by my real name. I got to deal with that. I don't just record and then upload. I can't just go live either because it depends on where I am and what time of day it is. So I admit that that recording was very, very short and I didn't have time to do justice. I was planning on recording this part 2, and then I saw what you said about having chosen a side, and it's cool. And it's true that I will choose a side on specific disagreements. See, you will have a disagreement with him about one thing, and I may side with you on that, and then I may have to side with him on another disagreement about another topic, to be fair. Because I am new, I'm aware that I'm new, and therefore I don't know even what all of you all's disagreements are. Now, I haven't listened to every one of your live streams. A lot of times when I wake up, you're already in a live stream because it's morning time here. I do not listen to all of his live streams because I can't. And they're long. He doesn't always do them, but when he does, they're long. And so I listen to snippets, but I don't get a chance to listen to all. So in all honesty, when he and I disagree, I don't usually know about it. I say usually. There have been times I've said some things he's disagreed. I can't remember what the first one was, but I said something about the Pareto principle, which they tend to call the 80-20 rule. I said something about it based on an insufficient chart. He disagreed. I looked at it again. I listened to his points because I had time. The video was short anyway. I said, okay, yeah, valid point. We don't always agree. So as for me having chosen a side, what I've done so far is I've been polite because I don't know where it is all the time that we disagree. I'm sure that you have a reason you disagree with DJ Fishgrease, Crimson Cure, Kendra D. I just don't know what it is yet. There will come a time when I'll find out. You may tell me what it is specifically that she did. What I know about are her videos recently. That's all. I'm just going off what I know right now. I do believe in knowing the history. As I learn more about it and as I learn more about people's ideas, then I will take sides, but it will be issue by issue just to be fair. Like you, I disagree with Dennis Sperling starting every single one of his videos with his rap videos. To be fair, I tend to have the same percussion soundtracks in my videos. It's largely due to what some say is a prohibition on wind and string instruments in our religion, and what others say is not a prohibition, but a discouragement. And so I avoid the controversy. I put in the drums because percussion itself is generally allowed. I do that. It's the same one sometimes. I look for new ones every few weeks. But I'm still speaking at the time that they're playing, usually. Or I'm giving people time to come into a live stream, and that's why I do it. When he starts his live streams, he gets many more viewers than I do. So by the time it starts, he's got a bunch of people already in, hitting the share button. And we got to sit there through 12 and 16 furthermucking minutes of rap videos, the same ones. So I agree with you. I don't like that. But I don't tell him that. It's not a grudge I have with him because that's his channel. It's up to him to do it. He can do that on his channel. I wouldn't necessarily be rapping if I was an attorney. I'd probably be doing spoken word poetry. Either way, but okay, I actually agree with your opinion, your view. That's unnecessary for his channel, though it is his channel. And that means it's his jurisdiction. And just like Alabama does not tell Mississippi what laws to pass, I don't tell him what to do with his channel. I just don't agree. So I may miss an entire live stream of his, go back later, listen to only the second half of the replay. I don't agree with how he interrupts people when they're answering his questions in the first fucking place, and he keeps cutting them off. And he doesn't even find out how much they agree. That is some real nigga business. I disagree, but that's his channel. So I don't really make a big stink about it because I'm not really focused on what they do with the channel. I listen for the benefit, just as I listen to you. When I'm awake and you're live and I'm on at that time and I'm not called to do some other duties, and yeah, of course I listen, and I listen for the meat. And I find a lot of meat in yours and very few bones to spit out. Now, I say that to be fair. I'm not saying I will never pick a side. I'm just simply saying that I'll do so based on the knowledge I have that reaches me. So when I give a shout out to him or to you, it is based on something specific at that time. The other thing too is that if I disagree, let's say I choose a side and I'm in your corner and not his for whatever reason. And you said what he's doing is trying to escort men back to the table to deal with the wicked witch of the West, the uncultured reptile. I didn't know that that's what he was trying to do, really. I knew about his daughter, but I didn't know that's what he was trying to do because I just didn't hear him say this. He probably did say it on the panel. I just don't know. And there's some people I can ask if he says this. But let's say that then the proof comes. Either several witnesses or someone plays the clip wherein he makes it clear that's what his goal is. Then what happens is I come out against him. But before doing that, I would say to him when the time, if an opportunity presents itself, I would say to him, we are not going to agree on this because I call for us to walk away from the table. I have openly advocated for young bros in the West to stop approaching sisters. Don't even approach. Save that for someone else from a more traditional background. If she's not going to have her stuff together and then make an approach to you, don't go to her first because the context is wrong. You've got Me Too. You've got social taboos and legal taboos. Just for looking not her type, you're in trouble. And she has social credit she can get for nuclearly rejecting you and shooting you down. Not just rejection, but shooting you down. She gets social points for that. Her girls are gonna high-five her. So she's got an incentive to do that even if she didn't want to. That's the real. And so I tell men this, and if I would have to say this, but if I'm ever going to just come out and say, yeah, bro, we done, I would have to have an opportunity to say it to him first, and about that particular issue, just to be fair, because if I'm going to come out in opposition to you, I would have to do the same thing. I can give you shots out because of how I benefited from you. And I try to focus on that because we already have an opposition that I've already said, a real opposition that is the gynocrat, the matriarch, her mamdingos, the court systems that back them up. That's the enemy I know about. And so when somebody has sided against that particular enemy, it's hard for me to know that there's still an enemy for some other reason, at least early on. So you may have actually played voice clips, but the first time I heard that was when you were doing it yesterday evening, your time, this morning, my time, in which you said, in which you played the part about him calling you a spinster. Well, that was the first time I heard him actually mention your name in his mouth. It's the first time. So, now I know that Lionel McTow disagrees with him. Clearly, I know that. I know what it's about, although again, I did not necessarily hear him say exactly what that is. I mean, I never heard BJ say what it was for which LOM disagrees with him. But then again, that's just it. Because I really don't know enough to go jumping in at this point. And as you said, I agree with learning the history. Now, Sir Anthony is his own man. I don't think that was him going in and complaining about child support. I believe that was someone whose first name was Anthony, and then there was a family name after that. I think that was another one. But the point is that he is his own man. My audience, they are their own men. So I don't necessarily tell them you gotta agree with me right off the bat. No, time will show them. And if I'm wrong about something, time will show me, or somebody in the audience will probably actually correct my memory, because if I'm wrong, it's usually based on just a faulty memory, and someone will correct me. Like when I said that I could not recall MC Lyte ever showing interest in anybody, really. She was always putting guys off. I remember that song Paper Thin, in which she's shooting down any man that approaches her. You're not deep enough. You're not smart enough. What you say doesn't matter. It goes out my ear, and it's just chit chatter. That's what I could recall from her. And then someone said, she had that song out, Georgie. And I remembered, it dawned on me, Georgie's something. Okay, all right. And I listened to it and I realized, I had heard this twice before. In my childhood, I heard that song twice at the most. Twice at the most. And forgot. But that was a faulty memory. Somebody came along, pointed it out, and I said, okay, all right. And I put in the comment section, you know what, you're right, I forgot about that. And even then, at that time in history, the character Georgie Porgy in her rap video, though he was not depicted, he was not described as a violent man at all either. But then, a few years later, she's coming out, gotta get a roughneck. Now, see, here's the funny thing, though. Even then, my point was valid. Because what I said was that she was, generally speaking, more difficult. She was generally unapproachable in that regard. Then the character Georgie approaches her, and over time she falls head over heels to where she'll even tolerate the other women as long as she don't see it. But then when it comes to the roughneck, she gotta get a roughneck. That means she would make moves to get the roughneck. He ain't got to approach her. He ain't got to woo her and convince her, nothing. No, it's more like she'll try to get at him. Girl, introduce me. She'll bump into him. That type thing. And so the point I was making was still valid, and I appreciated the men telling me or correcting my memory. But no, I'm not here to try to fake a neutrality. I'm maintaining it when I don't know enough to enter into the grudge, to pick a particular side in the grudge. And when I know enough to do that, because I do believe in learning the history and hearing out both ideas, then yes, certainly, I'd pick a side. It's going to be based on issue by issue, yes, certainly. But I'm going to pick a side then in that case. I just want to know the history first. I pick sides all the time, but they're based on things about which I know, like white supremacy. I do not give non-black Muslims a pass, or even black Muslims a pass for that matter, to give a pass to white supremacists. At all, none, no. I tell Muslims, you see it my way. Black is right, white is wrong when it comes to racial conflicts, end of story. If you don't see it that way, you don't know the difference between right and wrong. Or actually, no, you just want to change the difference between right and wrong to suit you because you don't want to tell white folks they wrong. And in that case, you ain't Muslim, because we're not allowed to change definitions of right and wrong in our faith. Doing wrong is one thing. Changing the definitions of what's right and wrong is altogether different. Even making a mistake of knowledge about what's allowed and what's not, if it's actually an honest mistake, it's just something you fix and you correct. But when you change the definition, for a Muslim woman to get up and say polygyny is wrong makes her not a Muslim. Ain't nothing wrong with it. If she says, I'm not doing it, then that doesn't make her a non-Muslim. It doesn't make her a blasphemer or a renegade or an apostate. Just to give an example. And so when I get the knowledge and I can sit up and say, okay, based on what I've heard from both sides, this one's right and that one's wrong. Or both of them are wrong. I'll take a third side against both parties. If I'm to take a side in the grudge between you and BGS, it's going to be based on what you both say. As you said, I should hear both of y'all out. And I don't think he'll sit up and just describe it to me. So I have to ask some people that are close to him, hey, look, what have you observed? And if 3 of them can say the same thing, I'm going to take that. That's how I generally do it, until he comes along and says, yeah, this is my stance. Now, when it comes to these grudges, I'll say this. I don't knock you for disagreeing with any of them, but by the same token, a lot of them, sir, probably don't even look for a grudge with you. I mean, they may be one, but I don't think they go looking for it. I'm not sure that they do. I've not heard the rapping attorney mention you. I just haven't heard that. Maybe he did. I just haven't heard him mention you before. Would I do what he does? Absolutely not. No, indeed. But he's got to be different from me. He must be. Now, some would say he's always hanging around Latin Americans. What's he doing around talking about black issues? If he's in Houston, and I know some people in Houston, if he's in Houston, in that area, he's going to be around plenty of us's. It's not really optional. Not necessarily so. And the thing is, he's not hanging around Mexicans specifically. So if you ain't hanging around Mexicans specifically, then your social life is going to involve several black folks. Because in Houston, you have an international black population. You got Afro-Latinos from different parts of Latin America. You also have several West Africans. And you probably spent a lot of time in Houston and seen it. You got several Ethiopians as well. So you're going to find black folk of different flavor. Chances are his actual social life is going to be around some black folks. But there are people in Houston that I could ask them. However, the first time I heard about him not hanging around them was just a few hours ago. So I could ask my people in Houston what you know about him, and they could look and see and ask others who do know. But it would take a while. By that time, I'd be back here in this country, having finished my visit in the States. But the news would eventually get back to me. But then we'd be on something else at that point. So, I'll take sides issue by issue. Yeah. Now, issue by issue with what I do know, I've already said I don't agree with how he cuts people off on his channel. I just didn't argue with it because it's his channel. Plus, I had other things to do. I don't agree with him always got to play the same rap videos. We got to sit there through that before he gets started. But it's his channel. I didn't tell him what to do. I wouldn't dream of telling you how to run yours either. I got my own, and I got to do first what does not disobey God, and then put out what is beneficial to those who listen, something they can actually utilize, which is why I say disregard your lady relative's permission and hit up the boys in your family, hit them up, put this in their ear, and tell them, don't even make approaches. Don't even plan your life around getting B words in the United States. Don't think that you're going to stay in the U.S. or in developed countries in general right now at this point, and you're going to have a life with a wife, and y'all going to stay together. Don't even plan on that. If you're going to stay, plan on staying by yourself. If you're going to try to have a life with a wife, you're going to have to plan on that elsewhere, outside of the West, outside of developed nations. Just don't even make the approaches. If they can't get their lives together and approach you with their lives together, equally yoked, meaning they don't come to you with somebody else's babies when you ain't got none of your own, then don't give them a shot. Friend zone them. That's what my message has been. It's been the same thing. Forget the table. Forget what you bring to the table. Don't even approach the table. In the West, don't approach it. Because she said she is the table. That's what I'm saying. That's been my message. I don't know everything everyone has said before me. Now, to give another example, I benefited from Angry Man in the beginning. I benefited from him. I didn't say I follow him. I benefited from him because he came up in the search results. And I thanked him once for a particular benefit. I thanked him for a specific benefit, to be fair. Now, I since, after that point, heard that several years ago, he said, and I heard from one source, and this is why I didn't say much about it, but now I'm mentioning it only to show you the methodology with which I will address particular grudges. I heard from a reliable source that he said years ago that the educated, thinking black man is to be the cleanup man. He is to be the stepdad. He is to be the beta male provider, so to speak, for these uncultured reptiles, as you would rightly call them. And what I didn't ask, well, I asked, but what I didn't get an answer on just yet from multiple sources was whether or not he was telling men that this is how we will be assessed by her, or whether he was saying that this is what it's supposed to be like because you're some biological inferior, because you're not a swaggerilla. Now, again, to be fair, before I take a conclusion about what I didn't hear and witness myself, I try to get more than one witness to corroborate. Usually 3, sometimes 2. Especially if 2 witnesses that don't know each other corroborate the same thing. I'll run with that, definitely. To be fair, I just haven't gotten that yet. So I never said anything. If it turns out that he didn't say it, I won't address it. I'm not going to blame him for something I don't know that he said, just to be fair. Because I wouldn't do it to you. See, as a Muslim, I gotta be fair like this. I'm not saying that no Muslim ever backbites and jumps to conclusions, but if another Muslim does it, it doesn't give me a license to do it. It's just like when some of these cats here, I get on them about, a few white supremacist ideas that they have. They're not hatefully racist, they're not dangerous or violent with it, but they've been brainwashed, so to speak. I don't fivagog. Just because a sheikh over here who's not recognizably one of us has some of these ideas that it's human nature for men to prefer the palest women in the world, doesn't mean that I'm going to sit up and say, okay, well, then that's a valid part of the faith. I'm going to say, no, that's blasphemy. You just called God a racist, saying that he designed people to prefer the oppressor over the oppressed. No, fit the guck out my face with that sure bit. Sheikh or not, I know that that's blasphemy. Now you know because I told you. Now if you continue in that vein, you've left the faith. You were a sheikh a few hours ago, and then you just left the faith if you continue in this. Because when you accuse God of things he didn't do and you know he didn't do it, you've left the faith at that point. You can leave in a matter of minutes if you're not careful, and the sheikh should know better. So I got to be fair about this stuff. But to be fair, that means I got to get folks dead to rights. If you want to see me just have a grudge with someone, I got to get them dead to rights. And even then, I can disagree with someone, you or them, without necessarily holding a grudge, but it's a disagreement. Now, he called you a spinster, and I said I wouldn't have used that term. It wouldn't have crossed my mind to do that. That wouldn't have crossed my mind. Do I hate him for it? No, but that was foul. And if he was thinking at that time, focused on what he was saying, and he knew he was calling you a spinster, that just makes it even worse. To do it not thinking about it is bad enough. That's reckless. To do it thinking about it, yeah, that makes it even worse. But he and I haven't had time to discuss it. So if I'm going to say, man, that was foul, the first person I'd have to tell would be him. But I haven't had that opportunity, so I don't make a show of it. I'm only mentioning it now in reference and passing to explain the methodology that I'm bound to exercise before I go even getting into grudges. The grudges have to be well-founded. And so it's not that I'm faking a neutrality. Now, I really don't know a lot of this stuff yet. And I'm willing to listen when people explain it because the issue comes up and arises. On the other hand, I'm very careful about who I go and ask because I wouldn't be asking about the history of the grudge in order to be messy. If I ask, I would be asking in order to learn the history so that I would know which ideas form each one's platform. And then I can say, okay, this platform is actually better constructed based on these ideas. Now, if I get caught up in that, then it would take away from my own message. And I might as well not be doing this. I think our goals coincide a lot. I think so. I mean, when I say ours, I mean yours and mine. I guess I'd have to ask MGS, do you want to see black men going back to the table, or you want to see black men walk the Ukfoff? What I want to see is bros walk the Ukfoff in the West. I don't necessarily want to see bros abandon the entire race, regardless of nationality. I'm not looking for that. Intercultural marriages, I'm sure they can be great. Mine is excellent. I adore my wife. She spoils me. I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate. I was married to a non-American, non-Western black woman before her, although many would say she wasn't black, but no, she was. And I was spoiled then too. And it ain't her fault that we ain't married no more. It ain't mine either. I've always told anybody it's her king's fault. And one of the reasons why it's not so easy for me to just jump on a plane and go back stateside is because I have to avoid traveling through that particular airport. I don't even want to go through there in transit because I talked so bad about the king last time I was there. That was a few hours before my flight left. By now, they may know what I said. I don't want my name to appear on any manifest going through that nation. I wouldn't even fly through a nation next door to it in North Africa. I got to be careful. But hey, look, when I knew what was going on because it was in the news, then I said, okay, all right, well, he's old punk ass coward bending over for France and the USA. Compromising the religion to do it. I don't care what excuse he's going to give at that point. It ain't his business. How about he fuck the shuck up? How about he tell them to butt the F out of his internal affairs? No, he ain't do that. Plus, apparently, I found out later on, I heard a rumor later on that he owns people. He still owns some people, according to a rumor. I couldn't prove or disprove it, so I didn't address that too much. Because one was a rumor, but the other one was in the news. So the thing is that being married to the two non-Western black women, I was spoiled rotten. That never happened in any relationship or the one marriage I had with the Western sisters. So I don't have the knowledge of the first-hand experience to go knocking intercultural but intra-racial marriages. I don't have that experience. Others I know have not necessarily complained about this en masse. One guy I know has said that he wishes he never married the woman from Ethiopia that he married, but the thing was, she was a feminist and she was posing so as to get to the States and live with him. He didn't know. This was years ago. Now he does know. But he wound up getting probably the only feminist in her neighborhood, and which is how it was that she was able to reach out to him. But in general, no, people they don't have these complaints. They have complaints, and even non-Western brothers and even non-bras complain when they get with the Western wicked witch, especially when they get with the sister. There have been men, believe it or not, in the Muslim community, there have been men from other Muslim countries, and on occasion they've married sisters. It ain't been common, but they've done so. And what they've said is they love to argue. And you know what? One of them, a co-teacher, traveled with my wife and me to one time we went to Medina. So we all had our visas to go in and cross the border and fly into Medina. And so she traveled alongside us. And she said at one point, one evening she said, I miss arguing. That's what I miss about marriage. That's what she said. And she didn't say she missed, the rooster, if you will. She didn't miss the company. She didn't miss having someone pay the bills. No, none of that. She said she missed the argument. That's what she said. This is a sister from Philly. So I know that what these other men have been saying is true, and this is why what I'm saying is more in line with what I know that you are saying, which is you walk away from the uncultured reptile in general. Now, in her defense, she said the next evening that she noticed something about the way I talk to my wife, and that is that I have frequently said to her, well, that's not your fault. She may mention a particular problem and it's bothering her, and I'll tell her that ain't your fault. Sleep with a clear conscience. You didn't do that. You didn't mess that up. She had not heard this in conversation before because black people don't say this to each other. That ain't your fault. You know what the sentence means in English, but that's just not something we routinely say to each other. How often do we say that? Man or woman. Even non-Western, this is just not something we frequently say. But she even says, see, I had to realize, she said to me at the table when we were eating, I hear how you talk to her and you say this to her. You build her up, you support her. She does the same for you. And I noticed that because I had to come to realize that the way I'd been raised was traumatic. And she had been. She'd been raised with that nigger plantation mindset, in which you brag about beating your child into submission and obedience, even when they ain't acting up and disobeying you. That's how she'd been raised from what she described. It's that whole, we going in the store, don't look at nothing, don't touch nothing, don't ask for nothing, and if you do, I'm gonna hit you and beat the snot out you in front of everybody. You know, that's how she come up. That plantation trauma, in which you not only do this to your kids, but then you brag, see, master, see, I beats my kids, master, you'll never have to beat them. That type of thing. She sat up and said this in so many words. What does this have to do with me taking a side? In order to take a side, and I am against what she said about I miss arguing, I also have to give credit where it's due. And I might have to give credit where it's due to the person I'm opposing. And so I try to make the effort to do so where it's necessary. Because even in my grudges, I have to be fair. I'm not allowed to go and transgress bounds because we have a grudge. That means I'm not allowed to go and just lie on them because we got an argument or we got a grudge. I'm not allowed to do that. And if they stop with what it is that's offensive to somebody else's rights, if they cut that mess out, then I'm supposed to also incline towards peace. And that's all I'm doing. That's what you see right now. Because I don't have enough info to go jumping down someone's throat. And when I get it, I'll do it. If it's yours or his or even my own. I've had to do that to myself at times. I've had to talk about what a damn idiot and fool I've been before. I've told everybody, first son conceived him out of wedlock, and I was wrong for that. I wasn't Muslim at the time. I was still wrong. And I know exactly, when I look back, I can tell you why it was. It wasn't just hormones. That was actually a very small percentage of it. That wasn't it. It was socialization for the most part. And I was smart enough to question the socialization. But in the end, there was no space. The internet existed at that time, but there was nothing called social media. So there was no challenge to the socialization. None at all. And that's why a lot of these so-called gang dudes and swaggerillas and P-ways and dating roaches, I should call them, still say the things that they say. That's because before social media exposed what most men have to deal with, the double standards and the lies and everything else and the deception, up to paternity fraud, these guys have found some way to succeed. But they were succeeding, as I've used before in the analogy, they were succeeding in getting candy from a broken vending machine. So to them, they wound up not needing those spaces before those spaces came up. We went through the whole entire lifespan needing those spaces and them not being there up until they were there. And my focus is on telling these young cats what they need to do. Turn this on its head. Walk away from the table. Done. And only consider if you are being approached. Exactly what they say they're not going to do. But what I've also said is, what I'm also here telling these young cats is, when you fail with her, it's not because you're a failure in life. It's because it's her VPS that's wrong. Don't let them tell you it's biology or anything else. It's not your fault. 80% 87% of all approaches fail anyway. So how's that going to be your fault when they're socialized to shoot you down anyway? When they're socialized to eliminate 80% of you. And not just 80%. I mean, that might be biological anyway, but they're socialized to eliminate the same 80% and compete for the same 20%. How's that going to be your fault? How you going to blame yourself for that? How you going to blame you or any other guy for what you don't get? They're socialized not to spend money on you, and it's probably biological too. Socialized not to come to you first, and that's probably biological too. So you're dealing with wall after wall after wall after wall, and then not on top of that, in the West, they're socialized to be Lois Lane, ditzy and everything else, and demand you be Superman, and the same 20, and go and compete for the same 20% of you and eliminate the same 80% of you. How's that gonna be your fault? You ain't done nothing wrong. If you got a neck beard, 23 living in your mom's basement, that probably would never come up. You probably got shot down before they even knew these things. So even then, though those things could get in the way later on if you had opportunity, how you know? Because they've let men slide with this stuff before. As long as they see enough other ladies let the same man slide with it, they let him slide. So how's it your fault? That's the other thing. I'm exonerating men for the things over which they don't have control. It's just that I haven't really seen, I've not seen Crimson Cure hold men to that standard. I've not seen BGS hold men to that standard, the standard which you got to get out there and game them up. I haven't seen them or heard them hold men to these same standards as I've seen Steve the Dean Williams. Now that's an enemy. Plain and simple, he is an enemy. At one point, I took Kevin Samuels as an enemy. Not anymore, but at one point I did. Before he was mainstream, before he was infamous and famous, I took him as an enemy, outright. It wasn't even because he was lying to me. It was because he was talking as though men were supposed to somehow know that their grandmom and aunt and big sister and older female cousins lied to them, let alone their mothers. How are they supposed to know that? They're not hearing some of these things until they called him in, and he's talking to them like they're wrong for not knowing these things from the very beginning. Well, if you were told them before, sure, but if you're 19, you calling in because you failing one after the other, and you're seeing that other men are not failing as miserably as you, and then he tells you the exact opposite of what your grandmom and aunt and cousins and even mom told you, you're supposed to be surprised because the women in your life that are related to you by blood told you one thing and you're supposed to trust them, and then he's coming along telling you the opposite. Of course they're going to be shocked to hear it. And I took him as an enemy for his tone and his expectation, not even for the information he gave them. And he still sat up and said, well, you men need to level up. And I was like, oh, so you're going to sit up here and talk about self-improvement. Have you ever stopped to think about what it is that they're not offering in exchange for what they demand? And then he flipped, and he's not an enemy anymore. You know who is still an enemy? Taz. I don't go in on them as much, but they're clearly enemies, bro. Because I know, I heard them say it. That's the difference. I heard them say it, and then witnesses corroborated what they said and other things I didn't hear. So in those cases, see, they clearly side with the gynocracy and the matriarchy against us, and I heard them say it. It was their voices. Sometimes I even saw the video when it was their faces on there with their mouths moving and their lips were in perfect conjunction matching the sounds they were making. And so it was clearly them saying it. And in those cases, I don't have any fear taking a stand because I'm not blaming them for anything. And just like you said, look, I know BGS said X, Y, and Z. Well, you know more of what he said than I do, so I get it. It's just that, again, I don't necessarily know everything he said. I just heard about him. I heard his voice call you Spencer the first time early this morning, my time. So I'm still new to that. That's what that's about. When you hear me give someone a shout out again, it's going to be based on some specific that I heard them do or say. No, bro. When I get adequate information, and I can say, yep, the so-and-so actually said X, Y, and Z, yeah, then of course I can be against them too. But even then, if I'm against them, and this also goes for you, I got to at least tell them before I start speaking against that particular platform. It'll be the same with you. If I I mean, we don't agree on religion, but we're not discussing that. But if I decide I got to go in on atheists categorically, then at least I'd have to tell you firsthand, first, before I start doing it. It wouldn't be fair for me to go and start bad-mouthing you or atheists categorically to someone else. That wouldn't be fair to you, because you haven't behaved in such a way as to provoke that with me. So yeah, if you see me being reserved, it's because I want to be fair, because when I come out, believe me, bro, when I come out guns blazing. I avoid taking prisoners in general. That means I gotta know, okay, this is exactly why I'm doing it. And this is how I know that this happened and it's not just a rumor or somebody's interpretation. And that's what I would want somebody to do for me. But, you know, we black and I don't expect a lot of us to do that. And that's the funny thing. In this space, I've actually had a lot of people do that for me, not make the worst assumptions regarding me. It's been in this space that's happened. Usually when I'm dealing with a lot of us face to face, first thing that happens, the most negative assumptions, and women tend to do that more than men do, but a lot of times it's, the most negative possible assumptions. Men generally did outgrow that. I saw it mostly here in this space. I didn't see this, bro, from ladies. That doesn't happen with sisters. Even in this space, I put out a video. I tell men, don't approach the Western sister. Oh, well, who hurt you? And as I said before, whatever comes after you that tells you, you don't even have to worry about it. That's an enemy right there. The one that wants to diminutize what you're saying as if to make it about you carrying a grudge because you're pitiful somehow, because you failed with women. As I've said, when a man fails with women, it ain't his fault. I do not believe in blaming these men anymore for that. Nope, ain't your fault. Unless you knew everything that they wanted and you still did the opposite, but you were still trying to get them. No, I guess maybe then you could say so, because you knowingly chose that which would cause your failure, bring about your failure with them. But outside of that, and most men don't do that. I mean, shoot, if a man decides, well, you know what, I'm not going to work on trying to get swag and a bad reputation in high school to appease this reptile and appeal to her, if a guy makes that decision, then he doesn't necessarily go trying to approach the reptile. So if he gets shot down then, he got shot down without even making an approach because she just had to shoot somebody down for her ego. So in any case, I think I explained it fairly well. I'm sorry it took so long, but again, I wanted to do justice to the topic. But yeah, I recommend that younger or newer YouTubers learn the history. And I don't say that they got to sit up here and jump into these grudges, especially not knowing. They're not required necessarily to get in on the sides of issues. Yes, yeah, absolutely. But when it's just grudges between YouTubers, they're not required to get in on that. It's not a requirement, sir. They don't have to. It does behoove us, to learn the history behind us so that we can learn what the ideas are. And then when we see what the issue is, well, yeah, of course, people can and they will. A lot of guys can and they will take a stance on an issue. As I would have to do. But then again, that's issue-based more so than it would be personal. But in any case, thanks for listening. And I do look forward to learning more from you. And appreciate your patience. And to the rest of the audience, Assalamu alaikum to some of you. Peace out to the rest of you. Black heart, black mind, black out. And black heterosexual non-select male power just because they don't like it. And black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day.